now going to turn to a conversation about cultivating the next generation of food system leaders. And this is really the perfect panel to follow because we will continue to build on a lot of the points that were raised in the last conversation around community input and innovation. So I'm pleased to introduce Michael Kotutwa Johnson, a member of the Hopi tribe in northern Arizona, an indigenous resilience specialist at the School of Natural Resources and the Environment and associate faculty at the Indigenous Resilience Center at the University of Arizona. Please give him a round of applause. He'll make his way up here in a moment. I'm also pleased to welcome Stephen Ritz, the Executive Director of the Green Bronx Machine. Please give him a round of applause. Tony Hillary is the CEO and founder of Harlem Grown, and Marion Williams is the National Program Director for Wellness in Schools. Bigger round of applause for everyone, please. Where are you going? Take a seat. I have to say that the preparatory call for this panel was pretty lively, to say the least. So, yeah, I think that's the word, lively. That's what I'm going to stick with. So buckle up, everyone. Michael, I hope you're cool if I start with you. A lot of the education and the outreach that you do around food systems centers cultural identity by emphasizing the why of farming. And I have why in my notes in capital letters. So I'm hoping you can talk about the why of farming.
Well, I'm from the Hopi Indian Reservation. We've been agriculturalists since time immemorial. I'm a 250th generation Hopi farmer. Okay, let's put that. So let's some of my Iowa people get done like that. And so, the why part for me is it's more important for those kids to understand why they're farming than just plain farming. Because I think nowadays we're still getting a look at indigenous people. We're still caught in their processes and some of their stuff on how they're able to grow food, how they're able to hold on 80% of biodiversity on the globe. But we need to understand, and our youth need to understand why they're doing it. For us, it's about our faith. I come from an area that only receives 6 to 10 inches annual rainfall a year. My planting depths of maize are anywhere from 6 to 18 inches deep. I have no man-made irrigation. And so what happens to that? You have to have faith. Right, you have to have faith in all that you do. And so that's the most important thing. Like I said, I really like the people to understand why they're farming than just to be farmers.
I'm wondering if I can stay with you a moment and talk a little bit more about climate resilience and nutrition security, which is sort of part of today's theme, and how you're helping eaters connect to these nutritious, delicious, climate resilient foods.
Well, I think I'm trying to have people understand the nutrient density of something like this. This is grown without any pesticides, herbicides, any man-made irrigation, and it's very nutrient dense. And so what I'm trying to show people is that, we need to move away from quantity and efficiency, which you've heard before, that governs so much of our USDA market system, and we need to focus on quality, because it's the quality of the crops that we eat that are going to get better. For example, there's reservations in Arizona that have about an 80% obesity rate and about a 70% diabetic rate. In fact, every American Indian kid born in today's society is going to have about a 50% chance to get diabetes here in the United States. So, but a lot of this is still me getting on the plane. I think a lot of times, we can talk about equity, we can talk about equality, but I just want to talk about recognition. I still want to be here, right? I'm still here. And so, I think that's one of the biggest misnomers that American Indians people have in our own backyard, is that we're still not recognized. We're still in the museums on black and white pictures. And so we need to move off the museums into your living room. And so, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Tony, Michael mentioned this need for less focus on quantity and more on quality, and that is so needed for the students and children that you work with and their families, many of whom are experiencing homelessness. How does food and gardening and those connections help those folks feel better and then do better in their lives?
Great question. First, let me thank you guys for having me here. Sometimes I sit and wonder why I'm invited to these kind of things, right? I look at the PTFI, it's so high level. My work is the polar opposite. We're on the ground. And this room, the previous panel was talking about school food. all the schools that I work in, every child comes to school for their academics as well as their nutrition. Think about that. Poor communities have no tax base, no local tax base, so schools are deprived from the basic needs of education. So I'm walking into schools with no art, gym, or music, and every child qualifies for free breakfast, lunch, and if they're lucky, for after-school supper, right? And I'm gonna talk the PTFI, right? So that's why I'm here. I just wanna bring you guys into my work. Outside of these fences here, we have kids who have no access to healthy food. We have children who go grocery shopping at the corner bodega, Family Dollar, and in rural parts of this country, they go to the gas stations and they purchase food. I went to a school to volunteer. I had no previous experience with food. But 11 and a half years ago, I met you. You guys started. I went to a Just Food conference and I heard this. It was a totally white audience. This is not racial, this is fact. And this black woman got up on stage, Karen Washington, and she's talking about food. I knew nothing about food, but she brought me into a space that changed my life. And now here I am. Why am I here? My first volunteer, Alexandra Payne, is here, right there. She now works for the Rockefeller Foundation. So it's come full circle to me, but to answer that question, I'm walking into a school and asking a kid to eat healthy. What is healthy? They have no idea. Ask a child where I work to name vegetables. They'll tell you tomato, a carrot, broccoli, only if it's on the stalk. Everything else is called salad, and they eat no salad. So it's very simplistic from the comfort of my privileged bubble to walk in here and say, oh, just eat healthy. What is healthy? So with Alexandra's and the children in that school, we started our first urban farm. The children plant it, and now they eat it. Now fast forward to 12 and a half years, we have 14 farms. We grow just shy of 7,000 pounds of organic produce. The kids eat everything we grow. And who said it on the previous panel? If a child plants it, they will eat it. That is true. But in a city like New York, where you're devoid of anything natural, where do you grow it? So that kind of defines my work in a nutshell.
Sure.
But I hope I answered the question.
You did. I don't even remember what I asked, but that was great. That was great.
Forgive me, I go on these tangents.
Marion, if I can turn to you, one of the things I love about wellness in schools is that it's so focused on this practice-based learning. Kids are learning to cook, as Tony and other panelists have said. When they do that, things change for them. Can you talk about your experience sort of watching kids understand not just that food grows in the ground, but what it tastes like when it's cooked in a great way?
It's very interesting that you ask that. Wellness in the schools, children come to us, they're very skeptical. I mean, they're intrigued by the fact that we're all chefs and that we also have coaches that work and help to keep them moving. And we also have green programs, so we do connect to the ground. And bringing them into a classroom where they'll see something and they'll say, oh, what are we doing today? And we just have it, maybe one fruit, one vegetable sitting there, and then they just see the magic that happens when they add a fruit, herbs, spices, seasonings, anything fresh. Most of our, and almost every one of our labs are plant-based. Mm-hmm. So we always speak to children to say, if you can eat it this way, you can add anything else you want. Sure. You can bring your culture to this food. And so most students that we have, especially now this year, with the Mayor's Initiative, we are bringing culturally relevant food into our classrooms. We are bringing their history. Yeah. We are teaching children about the connections that they have with their fellow students, because we always look for the connection. A lot of students don't see that they're connected to their community and to their neighbors. And they don't realize that in the history of our communities, when I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, we actually shopped as a community. Right. We didn't have a lot of money, but we shopped together. We'd go to the market, and we bought a lot. Our neighbor, we bought a bushel of something, and we shared it with our neighbors. we did what we could. I mean, we're in a concrete jungle, you know, so we had to buy when we could go fresh.
Sure.
So that's what, when we see children and they get that aha moment and they eat the food in our kitchens, in the classroom, then they go to the cafeteria and say, oh, we made that. I know what
cool.
that is.
Right.
And they learn more than broccoli, like you said. We also introduced them to the salad bar because that's where they have student choice. And so we were happy after the pandemic to say student choice is back when they reopened the salad bars in New York. And so we were excited about that because students can make a choice, they can learn about something new, and they get a sticker if they try something
It's
new.
so good. It's so great. I always wanted a sticker. Those aha moments, the history, the cultural relevance, the connection, and then that sort of magic that you talked about. That's, Stephen, you do that in your work. You give these kids aha moments. You give them the history. Can you talk about Green Bronx Machine?
Surely, and not to diminish, but I want a lot more than a sticker. I want access, I want opportunity, I want equity and inclusion. So let's be clear about that. And if not for you, Danny, despite living 2 miles from here and teaching 2 miles from here, odds are I still wouldn't be invited here.
Sure.
So let's be clear about that. I want to thank Karen Washington because I'm a first-generation farmer, a hood farmer, largely thanks to her. And Karen referenced, the Not 62 movement. The most successful person in the Not 62 movement was me, who after hearing Karen and Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz and Gustavo Rivera challenged me about my own issues, I lost 110 pounds and reversed my diabetes simply by eating healthy food. Grown here in the Bronx. 225,000 pounds of vegetables grown with elementary school children here in the Bronx. We have the top 10 health and wellness program in the nation, not according to me, but to the Harkin Institute. So let's keep it real. We have 875 schools across the nation in marginalized communities that outperform their peer index neighbors by 10 or more percentage points on all school performance indicators. Because let's be real, the greatest lever this nation has towards equity is public education. That's for sure. It's not going to be nonprofit work, and we can't nonprofit ourselves into prosperity. So these are some of the things that really concern me. But again, thanks to Karen, the one thing I come from a lifetime of teachers. And from my little humble corner in 1983 in the middle of the South Bronx, for those of you who dared to come there back then, we've partnered towards 2,200 living wage jobs. I'm looking at Alexandra, who helped us build a farm, in the middle of Hunts Point that exists to this day that has become a model. So, it's an interesting conundrum for me to be here. I remember when I left the South Bronx to go work in Arizona, I went from public housing to the reservations. It was the same thing, except stretched really far and wide. So, my brother, thank you for these seeds. They're going to go far. And, I will encourage people to think a little bit differently about the way we do all of this, mindful of where I am and who I am, and I wouldn't be me if I didn't speak the truth. We cannot change outcomes for children simply through nonprofit work. So I want to commend Rachel and the mayor's office for really putting their foot down and taking a hand on policy. But if you're a nonprofit working in a public school and your executive director makes more than a public school principal, maybe you shouldn't be in public schools. If you are a nonprofit organization who's paying your staff more than a public school teacher, maybe your program shouldn't be in our school. It should be in wealthy schools. Now, the flip side is I've been able to finance Green Bronx Machine by private donations and wealthy money with a buy one, get one free model. So all the schools that I do in Dubai pay for schools in the South Bronx. And again, if I were to tell you that a one time, and let's get real on what things should cost, what they do cost, and who charges what. If you were to tell me with 40 years of experience in public education that a one-time investment into a public school could generate transformational academic results, transform teacher happiness, because funny thing, happy teachers are happier kids, could transform diet, I would think you're nuts. But 875 schools later across the nation, we do it. We do it no annual fees, no tiered subscriptions. Our goal is to give it all away. And the work is hard, so let me be clear. It requires a lot of courage. Standing up here and talking about these things is a lot easier than sitting up here and singing Kumbaya. But the opposite of courage is not cowardice. The opposite of courage is conformity, because even a dead fish can go with the flow. So on behalf of all the swimming fish, I will get in the Bronx River, swim back down to the projects. I'm going to plant my brother's seeds with my kids in school, and we're going to grow something greater. And thank you, Danny, for having me here.
Thank you, Stephen. I told everyone to buckle up.
I got everything to gain and nothing to lose. You know, I haven't been invited here before. May not be back. I get folks need orchids, but I see a lot of good plantable land for immigrant people in my community who make $8 an hour. So, just saying.
Thank you, Stephen. This is going to be a question for you all, but I'm going to start with Michael with it. Can you talk about how, your work is connecting issues of food, nutrition, and planetary health? Because I feel like so often these issues are very siloed, especially when we're talking about educational systems.
Yeah, I kind of want to, and how I'm going to connect it, and I'd like to connect it, is I'm starting a new initiative called One Seed, One Child. And that to me is just, giving a seed, a cup of soil, some water, and just a plant, and the only outcome that I want to see is a smile on a child's face. I think we have to understand our food system a little bit better, and especially here in the United States, because unfortunately I think we are the nation that's getting everybody else sick. And what I mean by that, when I was talking to some officials from Mexico University, their number one problem is not agriculture, pollution, or carbon emissions, but it's diabetes, because of the adaptation of our food system. So we need to look at ourselves first before we go down to somebody else's backyard. That's how I look at things. And so, but my whole thing with just, getting people to understand where their food comes from. I've been gracious enough to have a nice Rockefeller grant to start some of this stuff, but a lot of my thing is to actually grow out seeds, look at a nutritional analysis on things, but just so that people can understand what they're eating in a way where they can connect to it. I have a special relationship with our seeds. To me, they're like children. I look at them like that. I would call them the new boarding school children because they're patented, they're looked around, they're genetically messed with, they're out there somewhere. And when they come home, sometimes I don't even know how to grow. And so, I kind of look at it that way. And so, I'm just trying to understand how people connect with their food system. I had a chance to work with Alex Payne over here. On her birthday, she came out and planted with me. I was this nice smile. It's talking about a smile on a child's face. That was a beautiful thing of it. And so, and I respected that. And so I think, if we could just plant something, one seed, one child, start that small, one seed, one child. It's a campaign thing, and it's beautiful. So I'll just leave it at that.
It is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Marion, how hard is it to teach sustainability along with the deliciousness of food and cooking and all of the things that Wellness in the School does?
It's difficult. We're fighting against social media and obviously cheap, available food in the neighborhood. It is difficult, but I do know that if people do think about their history, and I, as listening to the previous panelists about learning about your history, I grew up with my grandmother. I understood exactly what it was to have food, fresh food, only because she knew how to grow food. Coming from Little Rock, Arkansas, bringing her family here to New York and trying to sustain her family in the 30s and 40s, it wasn't easy.
Right.
Okay, especially for a woman that didn't read or write. It was difficult, but she was able to teach us a lot. And I know that if I can tell those stories to my students and they understand it and they have their own grandmas and their own history, that if they tap into that, they can remember and keep moving the legacy forward. So I understand everything the panelists are saying. Growing up in the South Bronx, it was not easy in the early 60s, and so it was difficult. So the bottom line is, we have to keep it going.
Right.
And I would encourage all people, whatever your economic status is, if you want to help children learn a little bit more about how to save their planet, get out there and do it.
I love it. Thank you so much. Tony and Stephen, sustainability has to be part of the work that you do, but when you are, working with kids who are, from marginalized communities and don't have a ton of resources, do they care about sustainability?
Absolutely. Yes, so let me say, we're here for the PTFI, and like I said, our North Star at Harlem Grown is a medical report called The Social Determinants of Health. It's 29 years old. You can look it up today, 29 years later. It clearly states that the children that I work with are expected to live 10 to 12 years less than yours and my children, solely for where they live. Food, environmental racism, violence, all the things associated with poverty and extreme poverty contributes to your life expectancy. We're sitting here in the richest city in the world. How is this acceptable? New York City is home to, 115,000 homeless children disproportionately placed in communities where Stephen and I work, that go to the schools that we work in, and I'm talking about, here, have a salad. I mean, come on, guys. So that is our North Star. So we don't grow a lot of farmers. We plant a lot of fruits and vegetables, but we do grow healthy children in sustainable communities. And more importantly, we're teaching these children how to advocate for themselves. Instead of having some old bald guy here speaking to you about it, they can do it themselves, right? So like Stephen said about nonprofits coming into communities we're not from to save and to teach people, how condescending and insulting is that? So we're there and we ask them, who are you, what do you want, how can we help? And then we do this together. So yes, we do grow future environmentalists, future farmers, future advocates.
Listen, the next generation of Sandra Sotomayors, of Barack Obamas, are sitting right in my classroom daily. And understand this, when you grow food in school, the kids who understand that the water that they used to run out of their fire hydrants is the water that's being used in our classroom to grow food, man, it's a game changer. I'm proud of my kids that boycotted the new Wendy's because when they found out that Wendy's wouldn't pay the farmers a penny more a pound for tomatoes, and my kids grow tomatoes in class and they know how hard it is to pollinate them, man, that was a boycott that I loved. And it wasn't just about the boycott. It was about the reading and the writing and the math. And understand something, that again, the greatest lever this nation has is public education. But when you use the lens, we've all got to eat each and every day. It's how you feed yourself and nourish your mind. But you wouldn't put vinegar in the gas tank of your Porsche. So why are we putting poison in our kids? But when kids learn about when they come to the understanding that they are the canaries in the coal mine, man, it's game changing. And I'm proud. We've sent kids to Choate, to some of the best schools in the country, some of the best high schools. Alexandra, I got kids who vie to get into JVL Wildcat Academy, simply to farm and go on to ag careers. That's the work that we do. So Karen, thank you. God bless you. I'm seeing so many friends around the room. We got a great young farmer right here, front row. I hope they're giving you a platform, man. If not, get out here and take one. Because nothing is given. There's no justice, just us more often than not. But at the end of the day, it's really about leveling fields so that our children don't just survive.
Thank you.
They thrive.
Thank you so much. We have about 30 seconds left. I'm going to add another 30 seconds to the time clock, please, because I have one final question for you all very quickly. Michael, what's your call to action to this audience?
Let me think. I think just one seed, one child, man. That's all I can think of right now. One seed, one child.
That's great. Stephen.
One seed, one child. So we have a brand new documentary. It's debuting tonight. Danny's partnering. The mayor's office of food policy is on board, and so is New York State Education Department. It's called Generation Growth. Please go to the Green Bronx Machine website. I dare you to watch the trailer and check out our partners. If you don't fall in love, there's something wrong with you, or you can make a big donation here and keep, growing orchids.
Tony Hillary.
How do you follow this guy? A lot of us live in our own privilege bubble, me included. I just implore everyone to step outside that bubble, look around, because what I describe, Steve and I work with every day, is not too far from where everyone in this room lives. It's everywhere, not just in the South Bronx and Harlem. It's everywhere.
Thank you. Marion, you get the last word.
Thank you. I would say build a healthy food memory in the lives of the children that you touch.
Woo! Big round of applause for this amazing panel. Thank you for all of your work.
And eat local, you heard? Eat local.
Thank you, everyone. Give them another round of applause. Wait while their photo gets taken.